Hey, we want to welcome everybody to another episode of You and the Law podcast show. I'm one of the hosts of the show, Virgil Green. And as always, I got to introduce the brother who sits next to me every Thursday evening at 6 p.m., who goes by the name of Chief Swaggity One, the ultimate beast.
What's going on, man? Hey, and before we go any further, January is the Founders Day for the majority of the Divine Nine.
Mm-hmm.
And so today is the Founders Day, 105 years of existence for the amazing and elegant ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. My sorority sisters were the only organizations, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, are the only true constitutionally bound fraternity and sorority. So,
hey man, you finna get some stuff started there, man.
My sisters, happy Founders Day. And the AKs and the Deltas, they also had their Founders Day this past week. The Deltas had theirs on the 15th, and the AKs had theirs yesterday on the 5th. Delta's 13th, AK's the 15th. Mm-hmm. So happy Founders Day, ladies.
So where's your colors at, man?
What do you mean?
Where's your colors? What are you representing tonight?
I'm representing is cold.
Man, it ain't cold. It ain't cold. No, it ain't.
I'm representing heat.
It ain't cold. It ain't cold where you at, man.
Yeah, okay.
You don't know what cold. You don't know what cold is.
Okay.
Come about 8 hours north.
Man, let's get on with the topic, dude.
Hey, man, we got another informative topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. You know, Keith, this happened sometime back in December, I believe. The incident that took place at a New York prison where multiple prison guards, I'm not going to call them officers, prison guards, who brutally attacked the man who was handcuffed in their infirmary, who later died from his injuries. So tonight we're going to be talking about that incident and where's the humanity, where's the empathy for people. Even though you may have committed a crime, you don't deserve to be treated like that, Keith. What we saw, I think you and I have talked about this. I think this is much more severe than what we saw with George Floyd.
Both very tragic deaths.
I'm not taking anything away from what happened to George Floyd, because we watched the man get suffocated.
You know, I don't think you can compare the two. I don't even think you can. You know, I think the bottom line is you have a person who is dead at the hands of those who have sworn to protect someone. And so it comes down to these horrendous beatings, these horrendous acts that are being committed by those who have sworn to protect, have sworn an oath to protect those individuals who are the most vulnerable. And we have also sworn to be neutral and unbiased in our thinking, that we are not judge and jury. We cannot take our personal or put our personal feelings in front of our actions. And what I mean by that, we can't say, well, this person's done this and they deserve this. We cannot do that. We've seen that in the Tyree Nichols death. We saw this in George Floyd. We've seen this in several other incidents where individuals have been killed, especially young African Americans have been killed at the hands of law enforcement. And then we see this horrendous act in New York. There's no excuse for it. No. It gets to the point of where you think you really want to say that it was intentional. Let me say why I say that. there's no other place that has more surveillance equipment, more technology than a jail.
Yeah, inside those prison walls.
Inside those walls, how do you act the way that take those kind of actions against someone, knowing that you are under total surveillance? Every move that you make is being captured. There has to be some intent there. There has to be a lack of humanity. There has to be some intent there. There has to be some. There's a lack of procedural justice. But my question is, why would this occur? And Virgil, I don't want to be long-winded, but one of the things that I've said several times on the podcast is that we promised the communities, we promised the nation that when we got body cameras, in-car cameras and body-worn cameras, that would help reduce these type of incidents. I have seen where we don't have as many, but we still have those that result in the death of African American men and women.
Yeah. Well, and the fact, Keith, that these guards they clearly know that this is something that they're wearing and it's being recorded. So when you talk about respect, empathy, it was not there because clearly they knew that what their actions was being recorded. This wasn't something that was just caught on a surveillance camera inside of that infirmary room. It was actually caught on their body cameras. Keith, I want to ask you this question before I show this video clip. These are prison guards. Do you consider them? And there's a lot of good men and women out there who work in jails and prison. A lot of them are underpaid. A lot of them are the staffing is an issue. But should we give these individuals the same immunity that police officers are given? Because I've heard the word there is immunity from being held responsible. But these are men and women inside of a prison who have authority inside of that prison, but outside of those prison walls, they don't have any arrest authority unless they're on some special unit that is out trying to apprehend a fugitive who escaped from prison. But do you consider these individuals as peace officers because they are, in this situation, they're being considered officers who have immunity as if that same thing applies to them as it does sworn police officers?
No, I don't consider them peace officers because those peace officers very clear. It talks about commissioned, and someone who's commissioned has the authority to carry a weapon and has the authority to use deadly force if necessary when it comes to protecting themselves or third parties. I do consider prison guards, detention officers as a major part of the criminal justice system. I've always said that there's a three-prong approach, a three-prong fork when it comes to the criminal justice system. You have the front end of it is the law enforcement prong, in the center you have the judicial prong, and the third one is the judicial, and then the third one is the detention corrections prong. All three work together. All three have a different area of responsibility. And so, no, I do not consider them peace officers, but I do consider them a vital part of criminal justice who have sworn to be fair and impartial and do their job in ensuring that those who have been confined, their civil rights aren't. So, it comes down to the fact of the matter is, you'll have people that will say, well, this guy had done this and guy had done that, or this girl had done that. It doesn't matter, when you're a criminal justice professional, you still have to abide by the rules. So
Yeah.
absolutely not. I don't see them as law enforcement officers. I see
What,
them as part of the criminal justice process.
what Keith, I just looked this up, and in New York, they're stating that prison guards in New York State, including those in New York City, are peace officers. This means that they have the authority to make arrests, issue summons, and carry firearms. Goes on to say that correctional officers in New York must complete training standards set by uh, the state of New York, and correctional officers are authorized to carry firearms off duty if they are range qualified and have written permission from their commanding officer. So obviously, New York has a set of different standards than others prisons across the United States, because as throughout the podcast, I'm gonna look to see, is that a same standard in Oklahoma, as Arkansas, or other parts of the country, or
I
is that
don't
just
know.
specific to New York?
I don't know about prisons. I do know that the sheriff's departments, a lot of their detention officers are commissioned officers,
Yeah, because
and they carry
yeah,
weapons.
yeah,
They
yeah.
can make arrests and things like that, but you do have detention officers who are not commissioned, who are not authorized to carry weapons, who do not have any arrest powers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the majority of state and federal prisons are operated by those individuals, and then the county jails, the detention officers are not commissioned. So in
Mm-hmm.
New York and other states, yes, probation. There's some states probation officers are not allowed to carry guns. Parole officers. There are some states that they are,
Yeah,
mainly the southern states and up north. And so, yeah, but I don't consider if they're not commissioned or authorized to carry a weapon, you can't
yeah,
consider them peace officers, because that totally goes the opposite of what the definition of law enforcement officer or peace officer is.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Keith, we got a comment in the chat from, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing her last name. Is it Cofield? Who is
Schofield.
listening and watching on LinkedIn. She said that is true. I don't know, Ms. Cofield, if it's true related to what I just shared about the how prison guards are classified in New York. And it's basically stating that prison guards in New York, including those in New York City, are considered peace officers. So, well, if you chime in the comment section and let me know, reply to that. She says New York parole and probation have RO. They must be qualified to carry.
Qualified to carry.
Yeah, yeah. So, and Keith, and I think every state is different. And I think when it comes to parole and probation officers, some states have that, give those individuals that authority. And she's also saying that they are peace officers. So New York must have a different standards that they go by. And I guess this question is going to be, since they are considered peace officers, how is this? And I think this is going to be tried by the state, because I think the Attorney General's office is investigating this here. Are they going to be held to the same high standards as any peace officer who commits a crime like this here?
I don't know. And like I said, I'd have to see what that state said, what the state laws. I would think so if they're considered peace officers.
Yeah.
I would think so. But let's just get some clarification here.
Yeah.
A law enforcement officer and a peace officer are pretty much the same thing. I think they go in. Some people say, well, they're not. Well, they're both. Law enforcement officers is someone who is commissioned and has the ability to enforce laws.
Mm-hmm.
Police officers, the same thing. Initially, if you look at the history of law enforcement, the initial word was peace officer. and then it went to law enforcement officer. So I believe they're the same thing. But as Inez has said, absolutely, they're carrying weapons. They're peace officers.
Yeah, yeah. Like Heath, and to those who are tuning in on our Facebook page, LinkedIn, and our YouTube page, we definitely want to thank you all for uh, joining us tonight for another informative topic as we talk about the incident that took place in New York a little over a month ago. We're talking about a lack of dignity and respect. And Keith, I've got a video clip that I want to play, courtesy of CBS News, related to what took place with this assault that led to this death of this man in this New York prison.
Back here in North America, an investigation has been launched into a fatal beating by correctional officers at a prison in New York. Newly released body camera footage shows several officers hitting and kicking inmate Robert Brooke, who was handcuffed prior to his death. A warning for you, some details of this story may be disturbing. CBC's Albert Della Talla joins us now. Albert, give us the latest.
Mark, that body cam footage, it shows the final moments of Robert Brooks' life at that Marcy Correctional Facility in upstate New York on December 9th. We do have some of that video to show you, but we do pause it before it gets even more violent. So in that video, you see correctional officers there appearing to place a handcuffed Brooks on a medical examination table after he was transferred from another facility that day. The footage doesn't appear to show him doing anything to provoke that attack. So one officer in that video is seen wearing boots and appears to kick Brooks. Another officer then appears to yank him up by the neck and drops him on the table. Officers then remove his shirt and pants as he lies motionless and bloodied on his back there. Brooks was pronounced dead at a hospital the morning after that assault. Final results of the autopsy, they are pending, but preliminary findings show what they call concern for asphyxia due to compression of the neck as the cause of death. They also say the death was due to actions of another. New York Attorney General Letitia James, she called the actions seen in that video shocking and disturbing.
I do not take lightly the release of this video, especially in the middle of the holiday season. But as Attorney General, I release these videos because I have a responsibility and duty to provide the Brooks family, their loved ones, and all New Yorkers with transparency and accountability.
Brooks had been serving a 12-year sentence after pleading guilty to first-degree assault in 2017, and that was for the stabbing of his former girlfriend. That ongoing investigation into Brooks' death could result in charges for any or all of the 14 prison staff believed to be involved.
And Albert, according to some critics, we're hearing this isn't it, right? They say this is part of a larger pattern.
Indeed. So we heard from one of those critics, the New York Civil Liberties Union. They said this is not an isolated incident, and they went on to say that rather it highlights a culture of violence and a lack of accountability for wrongdoing by corrections officers. And they went on to say that that puts the lives of incarcerated New Yorkers at risk. I read a report on that prison released last year by a New York prison watchdog. It said that 70% of the inmates interviewed, they said that there is racial bias among staff members there. In regard to this recent incident, the union representing New York prison workers, it said that the actions seen in that video are incomprehensible, as they put it, and they said that it is not reflective of the work that the vast majority of their membership does every day.
Okay, that's a CBC's Albert Della Talla reporting for us. Thank you, Albert.
You're welcome.
You know, Keith, we talked about just what we saw in some of those still images, just how severe that beating was, and not to compare it to, what happened with George Floyd, or even, going back to Rodney King. I think that beating is along the lines of what we witnessed, what we saw with Rodney King. Just the amount of force that these men continue to use It didn't result in Rodney King's death, but it definitely did this on Mr. Brooks' life. There's just, you cannot make any excuse for this. And as we, now we're seeing these are peace officers. You saw so many people standing around, there was no duty to intervene. And if you are going to be considered a peace officer, those policies that police officers follow should be the same inside of a prison. Should not be any different, Keith. But I think they were saying there was up to 14 correctional officers have been suspended or charged with this here incident, and it sounds like more to come. But here's a man who was handcuffed. What did he do to deserve to be treated like that?
You said something earlier before I answer that question. He didn't do anything to deserve that type of treatment. But you said something regarding to we talked about Rodney King, and you said that they didn't, that beating didn't contribute to his death or cause him to die, but it had long-lasting effects on him. And the nation. And just the same thing with George Floyd, and same thing with this gentleman here. It comes down to the point of, do you value life? We talk about dehumanization. Do you value life? Mm-hmm. Do you think as a peace officer that you're better, or your life is worth more than someone who has been convicted?
Are you above the law?
Or you're above the law? Does it do it? Can I say that I've never been angry? When you see someone who has committed a heinous act, but you have to remember that you're not judge and jury. You cannot let your personal feelings get involved to the point that it causes your emotions to overflow to the level of abuse. Mm-hmm. This appeared to be, racially charged. And, you and I have that discussion sometimes. I say, I don't like to jump to that conclusion but this appears to be racially charged. Mm-hmm. It appears to be that it was a lack of respect for a human being's life. Mm-hmm. It was the fact of the matter is, how did you think you were going to get away with it? How did they think they were going to get away with it in that environment, in that setting, with the technology and things that's there, with that many people? Was it not the fact of the matter that somebody's going to tell? There's going to be an inquiry to the injuries that this person has. Did they get their stories together? Were they afraid to step forward? Why did no one intervene? There's so many questions that need to be answered. But at the end of the day, the one thing that we do know, we have an African-American male who was dead at the hands of those who were hired to protect him. Yeah. And that they were in their care. Yeah. He was in their care. No matter what he had done, he was in the custody and care of those individuals who worked for that jail.
Yeah. Well, Keith, Mr. Brooks had already went through the court process where he was tried, convicted, sentenced to prison for 12 years, doing his time, and these individuals took it upon themselves to, and I'm just going to, they murdered this man. He died as a result of those injuries, but there wasn't at any point in that video footage that has been released that showed that somebody stepped in and said, stop. Nobody. It just, they sit back and they watch this continue to happen. This is probably not the first time that has happened, but it's the first time it resulted in the death of somebody, Keith.
That we know of.
That we know of.
That we know of.
Yeah. And so, again, people are going to, you can't make any excuses regarding this, Keith, that, these men and women are overworked, they're underpaid, they're working all these hours, they don't have any days off. Those are excuses. when your job, either it's 8 hours, 10 hours, or 12 hours, is to come to a prison and enforce whatever regulations or rules that you have inside of that prison, but it is not to dehumanize men and women and to treat them as if they are less than a dog. And the way Mr. Brooks got treated, and out of those individuals in there, I'm pretty sure that they got animals, and they care for their animals more than they care for Mr. Brooks' life. And at some point, you got to realize this beating is going to result in this man's death. You got to realize that he's not just going to walk out of that room and go back to his cell.
Let me ask you this: do you think it was intentional? Because that's one of the questions that's going to be asked that the prosecutors are going to have to prove to the jury. Do you believe it was intentional?
Well, and you got to, you and I know you have to. What is the elements of? Was there intent, and how do you prove that intent? And that body cam footage is that evidence of there was clearly, from what I'm seeing. Yeah. But again, they've got to be able to prove that to a jury that there was intent on these individuals. And somebody's going to say, well, in order to improve intent, you've got to say that when those men woke up to go to work that morning, that they intended on killing Mr. Brooks. They knew that they were going to kill Mr. Brooks. Well, we cannot say that, but clearly, Keith, as the beating went on, there was clearly an intent to inflict great bodily harm against him.
I don't think you have to prove that when they got up that morning. I think you had to prove at that particular time during their actions was their intent. I think that's what's going to be the question. I don't think you have to prove the get up at that morning. It's at that time where their actions. Because we know that the criminal, the elements of crime is either intentional, knowingly, recklessly. Those are the things that you look at. Was it reckless? Was it intentional? Was it knowingly? Well, I think that it was all three, but I think the knowingly, the fact that if you administer that type of abuse, there is that probability. Not possibility, but the probability, a higher level of death occurring. I think that's what it is. I think that they didn't care. I think that they got so angry that they did not care. Well, he may have said something. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
You didn't see him. Spit his bodily fluids on them. You didn't see him kick them. You didn't see. I mean, he was handcuffed, and you're going to have people who's going to say, "Well, you guys don't know what happened before." Well, and I'm going to ask you this question: does it matter what happened before? Because he's handcuffed. Whatever he did that led them to take him to, apparently something happened for them to take him to this infirmary. So it had to have been related to some type of injury for him to be in that medical ward.
I think we've come a long. I think it's taken us a long time to come to this conclusion in law enforcement that no matter what a person does, once a person is handcuffed, it minimizes or reduces the possibility of them being a threat. I mean, there are things that person can do. They can kick, they can spit. I get it. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a hard time convincing people that with that many jailers or detention officers, police or whomever around, and then you had a nurse there. We haven't even brought up that point. There was a nurse
who could have stepped in.
Who should have stepped in, knowing as a medical professional, knowing
you got a duty to
this type of abuse, this type of treatment could end up in serious bodily injury or even higher, and did nothing.
Yeah.
Those are going to be the things that you're going to have. That's going to be the questions that I want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you know what? We got to get away from this. Well, his family is going to get paid. That doesn't matter. That's the financial relief is nothing compared to you watching that. That's captured in history right there. That's captured in that's going to be long. That's going to be forever captured.
Yeah.
Anybody can bring that back up and they can relive that. That family has to really, well, he was this, he was that, doesn't matter. Somebody's child, somebody's cousin. At the end of the day, as a human being, don't agree to what happened to place him in jail, but he didn't deserve that type of treatment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Keith, I don't, if it's 24 million or 75 million, that those millions of dollars is not going to change that the fact that a mother lost her son, a father lost his, he may have had kids, he's got relatives, he's got friends. None of that money is going to change what happened. And the fact that I'm pretty sure the New York Attorney General's office showed the family the unedited version of that body cam footage. And to see that beating for however long it took place, and to know that that was the last time that they saw this mother saw her son, or this father saw his son, or this sister saw her brother. That I just don't think we have never been put in that position, and you can only imagine the trauma that family is dealing with and will continue to deal with. But these peace officers that they're being called, they might end up going to prison. Some may not, but they get to go on with their lives. So I'm gonna ask you this question, and it sounds like Ms. Cofield is familiar with this case in New York. If she's still on, this question to you, her, and anybody else. If these guys, some of them are found not guilty, some are found guilty, should they be able to, if they're considered peace officers, Keith, should their peace officer certification be classified where they can no longer hold that position in any state?
That should be the least of their worries. That should be the least of their worries.
Well, I'm not saying about for their, but what I'm saying is that where they may resign or whatever, but they can move somewhere else and get another job working in another prison. Should that be a something that is flagged to say you will no longer ever work in any kind of law enforcement capacity in a jail or a prison in New York or any other state?
No, they shouldn't be, but those are based on state by state. I get certified in this state doesn't mean I can't go and be a police officer in another state. Now, is that a major liability for whomever hires that person? Absolutely, but it's a state by state. Up to the state whether or not they want to provide. If they want to provide them with a certification to be a law enforcement officer in a different state. Yeah. You said something earlier that these gentlemen or these people can just go on with their lives. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what about their kids that have to go and hear the harassing conversations, the things, and their spouses, their friends, and so there's so many, their neighbors. If somebody comes and wants to pick it, so it's not that.
Let me ask you
collateral damage.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Keith. What if they don't care? What if that just says, well, that's just what they had to do, and they don't, and the neighbors, friends, everybody else, it's just like, well, hey, this is what he did to provoke this here. So what if they don't have that same empathy? What if they feel the way that those uh, uh, that these prison guards feel, that hey, I hear what you're saying, that yeah, the kids got to go to school, everybody's got to go to work, you're living your life, and people know your dad killed that man in prison. But what if those people don't care that
Then
their
that
dad
in
killed
itself
that prison?
then that in itself is a problem. And then
Because
there's a deeper problem there.
yeah, well, Keith, and just look at what we're seeing across the United States, how individuals don't respect other individuals' spaces. I think we're living in, and to listen to, not to get into the politics, just listening to what President Biden speech the other night, there is a lot that's going on in this country that it is really testing the soul of a lot of people as to where this country is headed and where individual people are headed, Keith.
I think we've gotten to a point where we really believe that there are those tiers of people, and depending on, if they've been in jail, depending on their socioeconomic levels, that they do not deserve the same level of respect as others who have not been in jail or who have a higher socioeconomic level. I think we're reverting back to that. I think we're reverting back because if you think about you go back and look at the history of confinement. The history of confinement talks about individuals who had debt, individuals who owed others.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how they paid their debt. They paid it in harsh labor and things like that. People did not feel sorry for them. They were sentenced to hard labor to repay those individuals who had money. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's at that point where there are people who believe that if you're incarcerated for whatever reason, if you are locked up behind bars, you are not on the same level as others. Not realizing that there are some individuals who go to jail that are innocent, that have not done anything wrong. There are those individuals who are trying to improve their quality of life. Even when they go to jail, they go in, they get their degrees, they learn trades, they come out and they be, they don't go back. The recidivism doesn't exist. There's just some people who believe that if you fight a police officer, if you disrespect a police officer, if you've been in jail, that you deserve what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's just facts. I've heard people say that.
Yeah,
we've heard police officers. We've worked with people that we've heard say that. They refer to people in certain terms that and I get it. I don't condone theft. I don't condone abuse or homicide. I don't. But you have people that believe that they are the judge and jury, and that well, what's wrong with me beating them up or assaulting them because they did this, and they're gonna get it. They're gonna get worse than that when they go to jail. That is that happens on a daily basis. This situation here, I just want to know what the man did that was so bad.
Yeah,
I just want to know what led up to, what made it get to the point that it became this violent.
Yeah, exactly. Keith, Mrs. Cofield puts in the chat, I made a comment about these guys just going to another agency, and she stated that, most likely they'll just go to another agency. Now, one of the things that she mentioned earlier in the chat was that something about the county, the Attorney General's office, the county, something about the AG's office is representing some of the officers in another case. And I don't know if she's meaning that the county is taking over this case, or is it still falling under the jurisdiction of the Attorney General's office? So that'd be interesting, because it sounds like I said, she has some knowledge of this case in New York that we're talking about. Keith, I just want to remind those who are just now tuning into the podcast show that tonight's topic, um, we're talking about a lack of dignity and respect for the men and women who commit crimes, who go to prison, do their time. Um, because, Keith, as we're talking about this death, this murder of Mr. Brooks, we've talked about this on our podcast show before, where women are being abused, women are being raped, they're being, some are being becoming pregnant inside of prison by the prison guards, and men, just the violent nature of what happens to men inside of prison, and the prison guards don't do anything about it. And so Keith, this is a much larger problem in our prison system in the United States, as well as our county jail systems across the country, and just in Oklahoma. And I'm gonna, bring this up because I'm familiar with it. Is because the Oklahoma County Detention Center has, for the last couple of years, has had the highest death rate among county jails across the United States, of inmates dying inside of the jail, not at the hands of detention officers, but just the conditions of the jail. And this jail is under federal scrutiny. But every week, almost, there is a inmate that has died in that jail, and you've got a community that is, there's no answers. And I believe the woman who was who was Nasta Jail Trust, not under the county sheriffs anymore, this lady stepped down and resigned. It is, so there is a large problem with our county jails, our state jails, but you don't hear a lot of conversation about how to fix these problems.
Well, I think incarceration at some point has become a money-making business.
Oh, yeah. It has always been that way.
I think it's about, let's say, because of the nature of the business and because of the type of individuals or what the individuals who are in there have done, I think there are so many corners cut by those who run these facilities. To the audience, there are what's called for-profit jails. There's a billion-dollar industry. Private jails, billion-dollar industry, because we're not building any more jails. So what we have is what we have. And so now you have companies out of Florida. There's a company out of Florida, a corporation out of Florida that is very lucrative, has very, 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 very financially stable. Like I said, it's a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar a year industry where you pay, counties and states and the feds pay these private prisons to house prisoners. Well, if I'm a for-profit business, I'm trying to save as much money as possible. What does that mean? Well, that means cheap labor. That means cheap equipment. It means other essentials. I'm not gonna, because these individuals are criminals. So why would I invest money in those individuals who, number one, who may never get out, or who are going to be here for a while, or who have committed crimes, and when they get out, they're not going to be able to get a job, and there's a possibility they're going to be back. So I think there's that mindset out there when it comes down to certain areas of detention that want to just do the bare minimum.
Yeah. Well, Keith, and to those who are tuned in tonight on our YouTube, our Facebook, and LinkedIn, once again, we definitely want to thank you all for tuning in. But Keith, I got another video that I want to show, and I think this video here is going to reveal the culture of abuse inside of New York State prisons. And this isn't something new to New York State prison officials, but is it a problem that they can fix, or is it a problem that they have ignored? But now the spotlight is on this particular prison itself and the entire New York State prison system. It'd be interesting to see how the governor of New York is going to come in and really mandate some serious reforms, because I heard that the warden or whoever at this prison, there was a new person coming in, but that one person is not going to change the culture of that prison, Keith, just because the death of a man. But let's I want to show this news clip, and we'll talk about that on the other side of the news clip.
A new investigation by the Marshall Project and the New York Times sheds light on an alarming culture of abuse inside New York State prisons. For decades, officer disciplinary records were kept secret from the public in New York State. That was until the year 2020, when lawmakers enacted police reforms in the wake of George Floyd's murder. The Marshall Project reviewed those records and found hundreds of incidents of abuse and mistreatment and a widespread failure to hold guards accountable. Alicia Santo of the Marshall Project is one of the reporters behind the story, and she joins me now. And Alicia, over the course of your reporting, you spoke with guards, former prison officials, incarcerated people, and you found a culture of abuse. Tell me more about what you discovered.
So we found that when the Department of Corrections in New York State attempted to fire officers that they accused of abusing people that were in their custody or covering up that abuse, that they only succeeded in actually getting rid of that officer and firing them in about 10% of the cases. We were really surprised to see such a low rate of success for the state when the state had found that this abuse had occurred, according to them. In addition, because we were told that this disciplinary database we'd obtained only represented a fraction of the excessive force that occurs in prisons, we also analyzed over 160 lawsuits in which prisoners were awarded damages as a result of their lawsuit. And we cross-checked the names of the officers accused in those lawsuits, and we found that in 88% of those cases, the state didn't even attempt to discipline the officers that were accused.
One incident of abuse and a subsequent cover-up involved a man named Melvin Virgil. And we should say that this video we're about to show is fairly graphic. And you got access to body camera footage where you see an officer beat Mr. Virgil multiple times. But despite clear records, photos, and video showing guards striking him repeatedly, the officer involved reported that he delivered one strike against Mr. Virgil, and other officers' reports supported that claim. Tell us about this specific case and how it fits into the broader culture of abuse that you reported on.
So the attack on Melvin Virgil is unique because there was actually footage of what occurred, which is I had never seen body camera footage from inside a New York State prison before. And this case really illustrated the ways that the officers all basically came together on the same story of what happened, which is clearly contradicted by the video. And that story actually became the official narrative of what had happened in the Melvin Virgil case, which was that he had attacked the officer and just one strike had been used in an attempt to get him under control, and that he'd remained combative. But in the video, you actually see him struck 6 times in the head, and you also see him go unconscious at the moment that the officers claim that he was fighting back against them. And another important thing to note here is that Melvin Virgil was sent to solitary confinement for this particular incident, and the officers' cover-up was actually, their story was adopted as the official narrative in the prison of what had actually occurred. And this is despite there being video evidence and despite the officers being allowed to actually watch that video and offered an opportunity to change their reports, which they declined.
Well, when it comes to accountability, you document more than 290 cases where the state tried to fire officers or supervisors who had mistreated prisoners, and ultimately just 28 of them were fired. What are the barriers preventing the system from holding these officers accountable?
One of the biggest barriers is the union's contract. So in New York State, the corrections officers are part of a very strong union. And this union contract that the state has agreed to has many protections in place. And one of those protections in particular that we focused on is the arbitration process, which is an arbitrator gets to decide whether an officer loses their job or not. It's not actually up to the prison agency. And we found that arbitrators in abuse cases, they ruled with the officer 3/4 of the time. time that the state was attempting to fire someone for abuse or for covering up abuse. So this resulted in a lot of cases where people who the state was trying to fire were put back into their jobs inside of prisons and back in control of other people.
Big picture question for you as we wrap up our conversation. Why should we care about what happens inside prisons? Why should we care about the ways in which prisoners are treated?
Well, prisoners are among our most vulnerable people because they rely on others for their basic needs and for their safety. But people also get out of prison. And so if you don't care about them being in there, maybe you care that they get out and that the way that they're treated while they're inside, it really could affect how their life goes when they come back into the world that we all inhabit on the outside. And then there's also all of the people that are affected by that, the families and the friends that love people who are incarcerated, and then all the people that work there, the thousands and thousands of people who endure the stress of knowing that there is a job in which they might encounter something that they think they would want to report, but the culture itself is one in which you're supposed to cover it up, and maybe your own safety relies on your willingness to cooperate and go along with cover-ups that occur inside of the prison system. So it affects a lot of people, and for that reason, I think it's really important for everybody to care about.
Alicia Santo of the Marshall Project, thank you for sharing your reporting with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Keith, when I found that, I think it was really important because that adds a lot of content to what we're talking about and the bigger problem in New York State prisons that they cannot get a grip on. But it sounds like they're trying to hold people accountable. But it's something that you and I have talked about over the last almost going on 5 years now, is that these unions that represent officers have so much influence, and the language in these contracts these states and municipalities agree to have some clauses in there that don't allow you to hold people accountable. And I wanted to show that because I wanted people to understand you probably have people inside of the prison who are trying to do the right thing, but they're not able to do the right thing, Keith.
Well, Virgil, when it comes down to, we talk about unions and we talk about negotiation and contract negotiations, and I've even had leaders of cities, try to convince, and, city managers, mayors, city council people that basically say, hey, if you terminate this person, you're going to tie it up, they get their job back, we owe them all this money. Or, hey, why not just, cut a deal with them instead of firing them? It's easier to give them 2 to 3 days off. They can't appeal it. Let's put them back to work. So it's a money thing. It's the fact of the matter is, do we have the money that the unions have? Do we have the support that the union have? Do we really want to take this to court? Do we really want to fight this?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you see. But, I don't think it's because there's not an effort to correct these individuals. I mean, sometimes it's like just running into walking into a dead end. There's no out. This is what, you don't have the support in firing them. I mean, I've heard, there's that happens. It's easier to just settle,
You walk away.
and walk away, And the thing about it is, man, she's absolutely right. Why should we care? Yeah, these are individuals that have committed crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, everybody, where's your humanity? I don't think we have a right as peace officers, as criminal justice professionals, by the oaths that we take. I don't think we have a right to take advantage of those individuals just because we're in the position that we're in. I've said this many a time. I'll say it again. When you're in the criminal justice field, you have so much authority.
Mm-hmm.
So much authority is bestowed upon you under state and federal law, whether you're federal, state, county, municipal policing. did I say that? Somebody's freedom can be taken at some given time where they can be confined. You
Mhm.
control a person's movement if you're a parole or probation officer. As a police officer, you take someone's freedom. You can go in someone's house, and God forbid, up to the point of if it's necessary, you take someone's life. That's a lot of authority, and so you've got to have the right mindset in these positions. You can't have people who allow these positions to go to their head. Because someone's in jail, you think you're better than them. You think that they don't deserve their rights, And so, no, I don't agree with it. And you do get angry at some of the things that happen in the criminal justice system. But you know what? That's the job we decided to go into. That's the profession we decided to go into.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that once we do our job, as whether that's a police officer, you arrest someone, once the judicial system sentences them or release them, once the detention system, they're under confinement or they're released, we don't have the right to try these people a second, or individually try these people, or individually hold these people accountable by abusing them.
Yeah.
We don't. And when we do that, Virgil, our actions make us no more better than their actions.
Correct. Yeah. Well, Keith, I want William puts in the chat, and I want to get to the last part of his comments is real significant because he says, however, many do not care unless it impacts their family. These 14 individuals that were involved in the death of Mr. Brooks and the video that we saw of those guards beating that individual, you got to ask yourself, would you want somebody to treat your brother or your sister or any other person in your family that way if they went to jail? I doubt that they would want that to happen.
You'd be surprised.
What do you mean?
You'd be surprised how many people wouldn't care.
Well, and again,
their family members are treated that way.
And again, I said this earlier, that it's just how the society that we're living in. Not all people feel that way, but you gotta wonder. This is a bad culture in the prison system, and this is just the norm. And the one thing that these men and women have to deal with every single day is that person who beat them yesterday is going to be that person that they got to deal with tomorrow. There's no escaping from dealing with that person. And that person is going to continue to beat or treat this person in a inhumane way until they decide, I'm gonna back off. So, Keith, again, I think you have people in position as supervisors who are not doing their jobs. You have people above them who are not doing their job. Now, yeah, hey, if you're going to fire somebody, just get ready for the lawsuit because the union is going to come after you. But it's going to be interesting to see, Keith, and if Mrs. Cofield is still on here, these individuals who were involved in this here, because as you saw in that clip earlier, New York it's been hard to get officers' discipline records released. So it's going to be interesting to see if these individuals have previous history of discipline and abuse inside of that prison.
Well, it's easy to get it done now. They changed the law. I know Florida.
Well, yeah, because it
can be done now. It was very difficult at first, and I think that's what really frustrates me is because we are treated differently, and we are sometimes put on that pedestal just based on the fact of what we do. I disagree with that. We on a pedestal. Those that we made a personal choice to do these jobs. We took that oath, and we need to have the courage to step down when it gets to the point of I'm taking laws taking the law into my own hands.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm entitled to plant drugs on somebody. I'm entitled to kill somebody because I'm doing society a favor. Those are the we've got to when we get to that point, it is just so we've got to stop it. And Virgil, you know, before we go, I got to say this. This is not, by no means, these actions do not reflect the majority of law enforcement officers, detention officers, jailers, whomever. This does not reflect that. But what it does reflect is that there has been an overall concern or an overall echo that this type of stuff happens and no one is taking it seriously. So it doesn't mean everybody's doing it, but bottom line is this has been said years and years that this type of behavior is going on and nothing's been done about it.
Yeah. Well, also, Keith, you know, the fact that they did mention in that news clip that out of the death of George Floyd in 2020, you know, the police reforms, and now they've got some other things in place. You would think that even, and this is something that we're still dealing with daily in policing, the amount of reforms that can be put in place is not going to change the hearts of the men and women who are wearing these badges. If you don't care about that person in front of you, you're going to do what you want to do. And no amount of reforms, no policy is going to change that person's attitude. And so I think that's where you have to remove those people, and those people need to move on and to go into other professions. But you got so many people who are worried about, we can't fill these positions. That's why we have people working 16, 18-hour shifts, because we're understaffed.
Yeah.
And now those people are dealing with problems at home. They're coming to a jail or a prison and they're dealing with these individuals. And I'm pretty sure there is a majority of people inside of prison who know how to trigger some people's attitudes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you have the right to beat and murder those individual people, Keith.
It doesn't. And my hat goes out to those individuals who are working long hours and who are not getting paid. I do know in our local sheriff's department, they're having a difficult time retaining people and hiring the right people, and people are working overtime and things like that because it is not an easy job. And so, tension and emotions do go high, but like you said, it still doesn't justify taking someone's life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, brother, it's been another informative podcast, and I think this subject is something that we will probably be talking about once again, because, Keith, I think one of the things, you know, to really stress is that this podcast, we want to bring topics that are informative, discussions like the lively discussion that we've had tonight with so many people in the chat. Because how do we change the culture of policing and to change the culture of this profession that we're in if you don't have these conversations when these incidents happen, to start that conversation about, these things happen? Because, Keith, a lot of times people don't. I've heard so many people say, hey, I didn't even know that happened. When did that happen? So you've got so many people who don't watch the news, who really don't know that these things occur until we bring them out and we talk about them.
Well, Virgil, you may change one step at a time. However, if those steps are too small, the change sometimes isn't quick enough. But you can't run, because if you run, you're going to miss something. So it's very difficult to figure out what the solution is.
Mm-hmm.
It is very difficult because we've got the laws on the books. that hold people accountable for it. We've got the laws, we've got
Yeah.
the training. You know, I don't think in those situations like we're talking about in New York, I just think you got some people that just didn't give a damn.
No.
It was like that we don't value this person's life, we don't value this person's safety. Who cares? Who's going to find out? Oh, you know, we didn't hurt him that bad. You know, he'll be okay. He's playing, he's joking. So I think it comes down to a lack of respect for person's dignity, dehumanization, and the fact that some people think because they wear a badge and they have that authority that they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to get to this last comment in the chat by Brent, who is watching on LinkedIn. He states that a significant issue is that our society safekeepers are wanting to be the executioner of punishment, and that is not the reason their positions was created. Definitely, Brent, want to thank you. Want to thank Ms. Cofield, William, everybody else who is watching and listening on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We thank you for being a part of this this informative conversation about a lack of dignity and respect, and the incident that took the life of a black man in a prison in New York. Brother, we're going to get together next Thursday for another informative topic, man. And I know you can't wait for me to come up with what we're going to be talking about.
Is that what we're doing? Hey, you know what? There's nothing you can do to upset me today. It's my sorority. It's my Soror's Founders Day. Been our founders. So what are you next?
So what are you saying? Next Thursday is going to be different?
I got nothing to say to you, man.
Well, Ms. Cofield, we definitely enjoyed you being on our podcast, and definitely share on your LinkedIn page about you and the law. We get more people to follow us. We get more people engaged with the positive conversation that we have about what's going on with policing in America. But hey, man, we're going to get together again next Thursday, and I'm going to see what kind of topic you're going to come up with.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be waiting. So
happy MLK Day.
Yeah. Hey, man, I am glad you brought that up because this weekend is ML King holiday. And, I'll be participating in some events this weekend. It's going to be cold, but you got to get out and be engaged in ML King Day. It's not just a day because it's a holiday, but I think, Keith, oftentimes people, and that's something we may end up talking about next week. What is the significance of ML King after, ML King birthday was just recently. He would have been 90 something years old if he was still living.
He was born in 1929, so he'd been 90. He'd be 96 this year.
96. So, what is the significance of the ML King, that civil rights movement, and where we are 60 years later after the civil rights movement?
Yeah, you're right. But I'll tell you this before I go. I do know that you
What's that?
I do know that you were one of the people that originally marched across the Pettus Bridge.
Hey, man, you know what? I would thank you for that, because I would take that, because just to be a part of that history, even if I was just in diapers. Well, there wasn't no Pampers back then.
My brother, you wasn't in Pampers, man. You were an adult that was making your own living. So you weren't in Pampers, man.
Well, hey, man, I think just to be in the company of icons like Martin Luther King, John Lewis,
Sigma Man, John Lewis.
Yeah, so yeah, man, I think coming out of the holidays, out of the ML King holidays, we need to talk about the significance and the importance of ML King and what does it mean for policing in this new generation of people who they only know about ML King just in history books. So, well, hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Again, we will want to see everybody back here next Thursday. And if you go to our Facebook page, like, share, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. It's free. share with your family, your friends about one of the most informative podcasts out there. And Keith, I want to, you know, we are in the top 5 law enforcement podcasts across the country when it comes to society and culture. So we must be saying a lot of good things to be in that top percentage of podcasts. So again, we'll get together next Thursday right here on You and the Law podcast show at 6 p.m. Thank you.